I like the other things that we said. Inequality. Alright? So we said what? You can use it to do a comparison. Okay. So basically, we could use it to compare two numbers or quantities. What do I mean by a quantity again?
An amount.
Okay, it could be an amount. What do I mean by quantity if I'm talking more algebra terms?
X is not equal to something else, or
Okay, but a quantity would be like
quantity.
x plus 4 or something, where we can group it together. Okay? So we can use inequalities to compare two numbers, but essentially then we have 4 basic inequalities. Any idea what they are? If you hear the word inequalities, what comes to mind? What symbols come to mind? Any idea?
0 with a slash.
No.
Is it just like plus, minus?
No.
Oh, like the alligator things?
Yeah, the alligator things. What are the alligator things called?
Greater than
Yeah, perfect. Number 1, less than. Number 2, greater than. So instead of the alligator thingies, now we're going to actually call them a name. Okay? So, if it's less than, I got to have a symbol. And usually, less than is written like this. Why? Because if I tilt my head a little bit this way, it looks like an L.
Oh yeah.
Know what I'm saying? A little bit? Yeah. So, if I then write the other way, obviously it has to be greater than. But, realistically, you can write it either way, meaning either direction. Okay? So, here's the thing. Most of the time when we do greater than or less than, we're going to have some variable, and then it's going to be less than some number. So we say less than, let's say 8. Over here we could say x is greater than some number, and we'd say negative 11. Okay, so you could have positive numbers, you could have negative numbers involved. So here's the question to me, or to you, and I want you to think about this without saying anything out loud. What's the major difference between inequality problems and equation problems, or equals problems? What do you think the biggest difference is? Everybody think? What do you think, Gracie?
Comparing.
Kind of.
You're not getting like a specific number answer?
Okay, I like that. You're getting closer. Anybody else? How about the number of answers that you have? There's one. There could be multiple, or is there always multiple? If I said x is less than 8 compared to x is equal to 8, how many answers are in this problem? 1, right? X is 8. I'm telling you that, right? How many answers are in this problem? Any number below 8. So how many numbers is that? A lot, right? There's an infinite number of answers, right? Because it goes where? All the way to all the negatives and negative infinity. So the biggest difference to me between inequalities and equations is the number of answers. You always have multiple answers.
Will it give you a problem?
It'll give you a problem. So the rest of the week we'll work on solving those problems. So we're going to solve equations basically, but we're going to put inequality symbols in there. So then essentially we're going to solve inequality problems, and we'll solve it so we have many answers. That makes sense? Okay? So, Are there any more?
It's the ones that line.
The one with the line under them.
Okay, so what do we call that one?
Equal.
Equal to or
Greater or equal.
Less
to
than?
something.
Or equal to. And then what's my last one?
it's
Greater than or equal.
Okay. Greater than
or equal.
or equal to. So, if we come back here and we say x is less than or equal to 8, just like we did over here, the only difference is now that we're including an equal sign, so we put the little line underneath the symbol. Here we would say x is greater than or equal to negative 11. So what's the difference between the two?
Wait, what is even the point of doing that?
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, what is the point? Like,
So what's the difference between these two?
no, what is the point of doing like less than or equal to?
Okay? So essentially, he's asking the same thing that I'm asking. What's the difference between this and this?
That was the one that,
What?
that's two answers.
This one right here can include what? Can include 8. This one right here never will have 8 as a part of its answer. That makes sense?
Unless it's negative 8.
But that's not 8.
That's 8 the other way.
But that's not 8.
It has to be positive.
Okay?
But
So, everybody see the difference between the two? This one includes the number that's in the answer. This one doesn't. This one has to be less than 8. This one's less than 8 or equal to that 8. Good to go there?
Yep.
Okay, makes sense? So less than or greater than. Now, here's the question. I told you that we could write less than like this, right? Or that it should be written like this. So, would you agree? Let's write it over here so everybody can see. So I'm asking if I can say the word or here. Are those two things the exact same or different?
Yeah, they're the same.
They are?
No, they're not.
Well, it depends on how you see it.
They're saying that there's a different.
Okay.
Yes, different
But-
sign.
If I, depending on what how I say it, but is it the
Oh,
same
wait,
thing?
it's
Yes.
the same.
The answer is the same thing, just different sign.
Right, because this one you would read it as what?
X is less than.
X is less than 8, and if you read left to right like we're used to, this one you would say what?
8 is greater than X.
But they're saying basically the same thing, right? Okay, so here's the question. Which one should I do? Or which one is right? Or which one is wrong? Is there a right and a wrong?
No.
No. Okay? But to avoid confusion and all the kind of weird things that could happen, I would always try, and again, this is just an always, I'm not saying that you have to do this, but try to write the variable first. In all your inequalities. Now this is really going to help when you have to graph this. And we'll show you how to graph in just a second. Because if you write your inequalities first, or sorry, your variables first in your inequalities, it's going to help you with graphing.
You know what the hardest question is?
No, I don't know.
X is equal to 8. That's really hard. Isn't it, Jacob?
So, here's another huge thing. When we start talking about these things, remember when we always had those key words that tell us what we're supposed to do? For instance, like addition, you would have what? What were words that told you about addition? Sum, add, plus, right? Turn to page 341. This is really, really important. So you can either write this down in your notes or just put in page 341 in your notes. Totally up to you. But this will tell you when to use less than or greater than. Okay? Notice the biggest ones are in less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So the first two columns obviously have less than or greater than. Is less than or is fewer than compared to is greater than or is more than or exceeds. Those are pretty self-explanatory. The ones that get a little confusing are the next two columns, when we're talking about number 3 and number 4 here, right? So how do I know when to use that and not just the basic one? Well, it is less than or equal to, obviously, but then is no more than and is at most. Then we're going to do less than or equal to, right? At most means that's the highest it can be, so it's everything below that. Okay? Compared to is no less than or is at least. And then we would use greater than or equal to. So again, I don't care if you write them in your notes or just put a little asterisk there and show yourself that it's on page 341, but keep those all in mind. Okay? Everybody okay with that? So you'll have to do some of those in your problems. Okay? The next thing that we're going to look to do is to graph inequalities. Now we're going to try to make this as simple as possible. So the first thing that we're going to do, when they ask you to graph inequalities, we're going to do this on a number line. What's a number line? Perfect. I love the little dash thingies. That's very technical. Okay. So I'm going to make this real easy for you. You do not have to write all of your little dash thingies. You only have to show me that you understand where 0 is. So put 0 down on your thing. And then depending on what the number is, whether it's positive or negative, that's the only thing I really care about. Obviously, on my number line, to the right is what kind of numbers? Positive numbers. To the left is negative numbers. So they're going to ask me to graph this. Why I don't care is because if they ask me to graph x is greater than 47, for the love of Almighty, I do not want you to write out 47 little slashes and then put what you're supposed to. Okay?
Thank you.
So, positive or negative number? So where does it got to be compared to 0? To the right. So, to graph, I'm going to put it on the side that it's supposed to be. Okay? Now here's the key to the whole thing. So, go right or left. You don't necessarily have to write this step out. Of 0. Number 3, we have to be able to show everybody where that point is. Okay? So you're going to put a dot. Let's put number 3 up here. Use an open circle if it's less than or greater than. Okay, so in my problem, when I solve the inequality and I get x is greater than 47, if it doesn't have an equal sign underneath of it, we're going to use an open circle on wherever we're going to graph it. So for this one, x was equal to 47. I write down 47, and I put an open circle. Why do you think it's open?
Because it's not filled.
Why do you think it's open?
Because it's not that number.
Because it's not that number, right? That was the difference between the two. So it's an open circle because the number isn't a part of the answer or solution. So use an open circle if it's that, or use an actual dot if it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So again, because it's equal to, we're showing that that dot says that it's right on that particular point. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay? So we're going to locate where we're supposed to put it, and then we're going to put our open circle or our dot. And then number 4, you are going to shade to show all answers.
That's pretty shady.
Mr. Fullback? Enough. So, where are my answers for this problem? Where are the x's that are bigger than 47? That way, right? To the right. Okay, anything? So this is what I was telling you. Remember when I told you I would try to always write my variable first? If you write your variable first and they ask you to shade, it always points towards which way you should shade. So I'm going to shade to the right. So come over here and shade in your number line. But I'm also then going to color in my arrow at the end. Why would I want to do that? Because it keeps on going to infinity. Now, if you see some of your other classmates in the other class, Mrs. Christoffel might show it like this. So if you want to do it that way, that's totally fine too. I like to just put it right on my inequality sign, or on my number line. But the shade shows me all the answers that are possible in that particular case. Okay? Make sense? So let's try it out. Where was our other one? Let's do x is greater than or equal to negative 17. So now, listen to me here. If they would have given me this, is again that the same thing?
Yes.
How do I know that it's the same thing? Just look at my inequality symbol and notice that it's always pointing to the same thing, right? Now, when you think about this, Mr. Kovac earlier brought up the alligators, right? When you think about comparing numbers, it should always point towards which number? The smaller number, and it looks like it eats up the bigger number. So keep that in mind all the time. So, if they give me the problem like this, and that bothers you, just take the time to rewrite it where the variable is always first, but you just got to make sure that it's pointing to or eating up the exact same thing. Okay with that? So, try to graph this one right here. So make your number line. Don't forget to show 0. I always want to show 0. To the left or to the right?
Left.
To the left, obviously. Open circle or a dot?
Dot.
Why?
Because it's
Greater than or
greater than.
Because it's equal to, right? Because it's equal to. Now, which way am I going to shade? What?
right.
Right? X is greater than that number. And again, this is why I want to always write it this way, where the variable's first, because look, it's pointing me that way. So I'm going to shade all the way over there, and then don't forget to color in that arrow at the end. If you don't color in that arrow at the end, you will miss it on the quiz and the test. Listen to me now. When we start doing this on the quiz and the test, this quiz coming up, I think, is worth like 75 points. Because you get a point for the dot, you get a point for the shade, you get a point for solving the problem, and you get a point for showing your work. So each problem is worth 4 points or 5 points.
And that's showing your work.
That's just showing your work. Well, when we get into this, you'll actually have to solve a problem to get to this and then graph it. So that's showing the work. But yeah, right here, if that's all you'd have to do, that's showing the work. Somebody have a question over here? Okay. Turn the page to 343. So, some of the other ones that you might have to go through is 17 through 22. In number 17, they want you to look at the problem 18 minus x is greater than 4. But then they want to know, is this true or false if I put x is equal to 12 into the problem? So if I put 12 in for x and do it, is my answer greater than 4?
Yes.
Yes. 6 is bigger than 4, right? How about number 21? If I put my 9 in into the equation, x divided by 3 is greater than or equal to 2, is that true or false?
True.
True, right? Because my answer is what? 3. Okay? On number 35. Everybody look at number 35. Write an inequality from that graph. So, go ahead. Try to write it down on your paper. So you're thinking about, it doesn't matter what your variable is. You can use whatever variable you want. And then you have to think about, is it equal to or not? And then the number. So, for number 35, what'd you come up with?
X greater than 13.
Everybody agree? Why greater than?
Because
It's
not,
shaded to the right.
Okay, but why greater than?
it's not filled in.
It's not filled in, it's just an open circle. And then notice, see how they blued it in all the way and included the arrow? I don't know if blued it in is correct. How about number 37? What would we say for 37?
X is less than negative 2.
X is less than or equal to
Oh,
negative 3 because it's colored in, right? Then the dot. There's always going to be a shade, but then you got to look at the dot. Make sense? Okay? Any questions with any of that stuff? All right. So the rest of the week, after we get do our quiz tomorrow, we'll start working on actual problems that involved inequality. So we'll take the equal sign out and we'll put an inequality sign in there. Okay? It's not that hard.
What is the quiz?
So, the quiz
Is the quiz gonna happen?
is just over the first 3 chapters, or 3 sections. All right, so what have we done this section?
Equations with variables on both sides, and then solve equations, and then equations.
Right, so basically we're going to solve equations either by doing what?